Hey everybody, Quantum here, and in this video we're going to be breaking down some of the latest Lorcana tournaments for the Shimmering Skies metagame, or the Set 5 meta, that occurred over the Labor Day weekend, at least here in North America. So there's a couple of important ones that happened, and as per the title and or thumbnail of this video, there seems to be some very interesting and changing meta trends. The first one I want to take a look at is going to be this CCS, or Charlie's Collectible Show. This was a 10K that happened over the weekend, and Brennan DeCanio took it with Steel Song. And what's going to be interesting when you see this list here is there's no Daisy Duck, there's no flutes. He's just playing straight old school Steel Song, with the only additions from set 5 being Pete, Games Referee at 4, and 4 Naveen. In the DLC challenge in Toronto, there were a couple of top players speaking with some of my friends about Naveen being played at 4 in Steel Song, just because it's such a high impact card. It'll be interesting to hear Brennan DeCanio's take on why he decided to build the deck this way with lanterns instead of flutes. And you might be thinking, well, how could a deck like this even keep up then without the daisies, without the flutes, with the Sapphire decks? Because we know that, you know, Amber Steel Song basically has to go aggro in order to outpace the Sapphire control decks. And well, I mean, we're going to have to go back and see if we can find the footage, which I'm sure exists somewhere, but he did actually beat Ruby Sapphire Popsicle deck that came in second place. And what's interesting with this list, once again, is you got the Chicha, you've got the Tipo, you've got Visions of the Future, you've got the Mufasa, a lot of different set 5 cards, and 3 copies of Scar Vicious Cheater in this build as well. Very, very interesting list to see these two decks make it to the top of the CCS with a lot of players, 186 in total. So yeah, no, I'm not, and I believe Luca, yeah, also made top 8 here using Ruby Amethyst, what they're known for. Still on the Brooms and the Chernobog Followers. Only 2 libraries. I recently posted a build actually and gameplay of using 4 libraries with Jim Hawkins, for example. This one, you know, obviously very similar, but opting for Crabs and Medusa still, 1 Sisu, still on the 4 Be Prepared, still on 4 Castles, valuing this over the library. It's going to be interesting to see if the library overtakes Castle as the preferred locations, if somebody's going with the Chernobog and the Magic Brooms. But, you know, Ruby Amethyst is still out here. The core of what it does with the Merlin bounce package still very strong, and locations seem to not be going anywhere despite all the anti-location tech coming into set 5. We take a look at Luca's deck. I imagine this would more or less be the same. Okay, nope, actually, instead of the Brooms and the Chernobog Followers, they're opting for the Olaf and the Minnie Mouse. Are they on Teeth and Ambitions? No, they're not. But one of the reasons I would think that you would run this package is to combat the Cinderella Let the Storm Rage On, which is still very prevalent. Obviously, you just saw Brennan DeCanio Steel Song list utilizing the Cinderella and Robin Hood as their only 1-drops, no Queens, no Daisy Ducks. And this is a good way to mitigate that turn 1 tempo loss, right, if you're playing something like Chernobog Followers or Magic Broom. Still on the Flynn Rider and the Sisu package, still on King Undisputed. No library there for Luca, but still on 4 Queen's Castle. On 4 Elsa the 5th Spirit, I do like this on the 2 Tremaines and the 3 Medusas. So yeah, very, very removal heavy list with the Mauis, the Elsas, the Tremaines, the Medusas, the Be Prepared, and the Sisu. Of course, you have the rush cards early on like the Madam Mim Fox. So again, just a standard Ruby Amethyst list, more or less, still out here putting in the work. What's also interesting here is we take a look at an Emerald Amethyst deck. This one is kind of a control tempo-oriented bounce deck, using things like, well, only 1 copy of Kit Cloud Kicker, 1 copy of Emerald Chromacon, but you're using the Lyle Rourke now. Hopefully I'm saying that name correctly. This card, I think, is definitely going to come into the meta a lot more for Emerald decks. This card, you know, just an amazing anti-aggro card. And the Emerald aggro decks, I've talked about this before, are really solid, like almost, I don't want to say auto win, but like really solid counters to opposing aggro decks, simply because you have things like, I mean, this one isn't running the Jock, but you have Kit Cloud Kicker, you have Muses if you opt to run a song heavy package. You can run things like Elsa in the Amethyst version, and then of course, like I said, the Lyle, which is very hard for aggro to out, because as the Emerald player, if you are running your cards into the aggro cards and your cards are getting banished as well, you're draining lore from them with the Lyle. And we'll talk about this deck also made it to the finals of a tournament in Sweden. We'll talk about this deck and actually how it played out against an aggro deck, which is kind of interesting. What's also cool to see is set 1 Rafiki in this deck. this card has been teched in and out of Amethyst list to a certain degree over the course of, I guess, the 5 sets in Lorcana. And this card is definitely a solid pick. Yes, Mimfox is, we've talked about this many times, like, turn 3 de facto, this is the card I'm going to play to bounce a card and get the 4/3 overstat body on board and rush. But Rafiki just not needing that body can be very, very beneficial as well. Just dropping, with nothing on board, dropping, and it's really unexpected, and then just taking out a threat. With all of the rush cards, only 1 copy of Library, which is interesting. 2 Elsas, 2 Cricky, and 2 of the Mother Gothel, with 2 of the smaller Gothel as the shift target as well. No morphs here, but of course you can just hard cast this out. For Clarabelle, Clumsy Guest, I do like this as the anti-item tech, in the deck. Not normally a 1-drop that you would want to play on turn 1, but neither is the Cogsworth, to be fair. So whatever you play on turn 1, if you do play something on turn 1 with a deck like this, I imagine you are trying to bounce it back with the Snake or the Fox later on in the turn in order to get, the actual utilization out of these cards if you need them. Now, obviously, if you're not playing against an item deck, the Clarabelle can just sit on board and not do anything, but only 6 1-drops in total. Yeah, you're not really overdeveloping anything in the early game. It's, again, more of a tempo control oriented deck. So yeah, this one is not necessarily aggro, but it does what Amethyst wants to do as well with the bounce package. What's also really key here, and I will talk about this maybe in a separate video, but I do think Emerald is still the strongest color in the game. The addition of a card like You're Welcome with Bruno, and I know this list is not running any Brunos, but the hard removal options of Bruno and You're Welcome make Emerald tempo decks insanely powerful, in my opinion. So you got 2 copies of You're Welcome here. Obviously, the synergy is you can play You're Welcome, bounce a threat on your opponent's side, and if you have Clarabelle on board, you force your opponent to draw 2. That will usually be an additional 2 draw for you if you have Clarabelle during the end of the turn there. So yeah, really, really strong synergy there. It'll be interesting to see how this meta continues to develop. Aside from that, there's nothing else that's too too interesting. I think Jonathan Lamb, was this the person who came first in Toronto after Swiss? I could be wrong about that, but I think Lamb Chops, I recognize the name. Running Sapphire Steel with the hooks, the fire, the cannons, still on the Argus, because as we've seen, the Flynn Riders Sisu package is still very prevalent. On Mickey's and Fishbone Quills, on the Chenpo, on 2 of the Pete Games referee, still on the Bell. No Tamatoa. You do see 1 of the Kronk, Junior Chipmunk. I wonder if that's correct or if they actually meant to play the new Kronk, because this card still gets... Oh, no, it does not get outed by Zeus, sorry. This card survives Zeus because it has resist 1. So I think that's some of the reason why they're opting to play cards like this. Cards that can survive opposing Zeuses. 3 of the Grab Your Swords, 2 Lucky Dimes, 1 Cusco Selfish Emperor. So you can see not a lot of anti-location tech, despite the cards being available to the Sapphire and Steel colors now, like the Simba, the Cusco, the Hideaway, etc. But yeah, very interesting list. 2 Let It Goes, 4 Whole New Worlds, 1 Aerial as your dime target, no Tamatoa, which I'm not sure how I feel about it. Obviously, this person did very well, so congratulations to them. But I do think if you're playing Sapphire, you're basically playing Tamatoa Turbo. For the most part, we will take a look at something very, very interesting in just a bit if you stick around. So aside from that, is there anything else we might want to take a look at here? We've got the Sisu Popsicle build. Well, this one will probably be more traditional. I doubt this one has Scar in it. Still on the Chicha. Yeah, no Scar like the second place list. 4 Sisu Empowered Sibling, 4 Tamatoa, 4 Maleficent, 4 Donald. Okay, yep. So you can see these lists are quite diverse in the way that they can be built now, which you love to see it, because these individual tech options for the meta, for the tournament you're in, will play a huge role. And I think there was a purple steel. I want to just take a quick look at this, because I recently posted a video about Jafar, but I don't think Jafar is the best version of this color combination to play. So this one is, yeah, I think they called it Classic Bounce or something. Nope, just Steel Amethyst, okay. But you've got 10 1-drops. A lot of people valuing this Cogsworth in these Steel Amethyst builds, it looks like. A good solid 2-drops, probably the best 2-drops in the game. 4 Friends, 2 Maleficent, 3 Crab, 4 Pete, 2 Strength, 4 Zeus. All right, so yeah, it's really just a tempo bounce deck, right? More or less. Interesting list. Some anti-aggro options in there as well, with the Tinkerbell, with the Elsa, with the Strength, Castles, Pete's to you know, kind of control the game state a little bit. I don't know, when I look at a list like this, it does seem like it would be underwhelming. So, you know, really huge props to this player for coming 11th with a deck like this. But that rounds out the CCS. Yeah, again, really interesting Steel Song list, taking the cake. You know, obviously Brendan DeCanio is a remarkable player, so I'm sure the player skill has a lot to do with how he piloted this deck to first place. But yeah, just no nonsense. None of this daisy shenanigans. Just go straight down to business. Controlling the board with Cinderella, setting up the shift target with the Robin Hood, getting my lantern so that I can advantage more into a whole new world, which I can then instantly cast with the Naveen. It's just really, really solid lines of play for the most part from what I can see here. And if you count the uninkables in this one, you got 7, 11, 14. Only 14 uninkables, so very, very playable. Oh, no, sorry, 18 with the Naveens. Okay, that's fair. I was like, yeah, normally Steel Song is up to like 20 uninkables now. So, yeah, interesting tournament there by the CCS. The other one I really want to take a look at, because I think this is actually super interesting, guys. They had a Lorcana Anniversary tournament for the Player Network here. And we had a red-blue mirror in the finals. And this one was only $81 somehow. But this deck is insane, okay? So this is basically a villains deck, right? And it works very well. So you might be looking at this and being like, what the heck, King Candy as your 1-drop, and you're playing like the Shift King Candy. Where is it? Oh, here. Oh, they have the enchanted version on the picture. Okay. Like, what the heck is this? Like, this just seems so janky, right? But it actually is remarkable. So let me try to break down how I think this deck works, right? So what's interesting here is King Candy as the 1-drop is obviously a 1-drop inkable 2/2 body. That's a villain. And when you look at a card like Potion of Might, which they're running 2 of, this card says you pay 1, banish the item, chosen character gets +3 strength this turn, and if it's a villain, they get +4 instead. So when you actually look at the curve of this deck in terms of the character development, you have King Candy, villain, as 1. Cruella de Vil and Gaston on 2, which are villains. LeFou is there for support. We'll talk about his role in a second. Okay, Noi is there as a 1 of, probably for the synergy with LeFou and the 1 of Shield. You know, to just keep this readied up. It has ward. You basically can't out this unless you play an 8-drop Sisu, more or less. You got 4 Tipo for the ramp, okay. 3 Brawl for removal, Fish Hook, Poison Apple, Plank, and Sword of Truth. We'll take a look at those items in just a second. You've got Triton to banish items to gain 3 lore, so it's like no villains along those lines. But your 1 and 2 drops are able to be boosted up to, this can go up to 6. The Cruella with evasive during your turn can go up to 7. The Gaston can go up to 8 strength. Okay, so these 1 and 2 drops can take out virtually anything. Library with 8 toughness, no problem for the Gaston, right? With the Potion of Might boosting up to strength. And then you kind of get towards the top. Okay, of course you have Flavorsham, right? You don't need to explain that. But you got Prince John, and this is another card that I think the deck more or less functions around. The Prince John Gold Lover, where for 4 inkable, it's a 3/4 body, so it dodges a lot of removal. Like the opponent needs to ice block it down in order to like Muses bounce it or banish it with like a Brawl or something like that. It does get hit by Medusa, but you know that's neither here nor there at the moment. But you play this, it survives, similar to how the Queen Diviner functioned. You exert it, you play an item from your hand or discard with cost 5 or less for free. And so when you look at the item package that this deck runs, you have the Popsicles, you have the Potion of Might at 2. This card can get recurred by that Prince John. You've got a Fish Hook that you probably don't need to recur. You got a Shield of Virtue. You've got a Poisoned Apple. So this, the Plank, the Sword of Truth, and the Potion of Might, and of course the Popsicles are all cards that the Prince John can recur after their effects have been used, or they get banished off of Hiram, questing and drawing cards, or off the Triton, gaining lore off of them. So this card functions almost like just keep recurring items. What I would like to see is also maybe the 5-cost uninkable Merlin's Bag item, which allows you to pay 1, exert it, and bring back an item to your hand. It's really good to bring back 1-cost items like Potion of Might, like Popsicle, like Shield of Virtue, if it gets banished off of Hiram, for example, or the Triton. But the ability to constantly recycle the Poison Apple is very powerful, because this card will force an exertion or just straight up banish the character if it's a princess. The Plank will straight up banish a hero for the cost of 2, or ready a villain, which means you can just continually, you know, ready up the Prince John if you've used it to, let's say, bring back another powerful item like Sword of Truth. which you can play for free, and then there's no cost to activate this to banish it and banish an opposing villain character. But like for example, with Steel Song being popular, right? The Plank can take out Naveen's, can take out Ariel's. Poison Apple can take out Ariel's, take out Cinderella's. It can take out Belle's. It can take out a lot of different things. And then, like I said, in worst case scenarios, it can also force the exertion. If your opponent is sitting there with like a ready Clarabelle, you can tap it down with the Poisoned Apple. Then you can just Potion of Might, a King Candy, and then that's 6 strength into the Clarabelle to wipe it out, right? LeFou, the Shield of Virtue, things that will help ready up things like the Triton, like the Prince John, like the Noi, just so they can use their abilities again or protect themselves. You also have additional villains, like you have Gaston, which can obviously shift on the 2-drop Gaston. This card obviously is a Scry 3, but also Quest for 3 is a 4/4 body, so protected from a lot of strength-based and I guess you could say to a certain extent willpower-based removal. It does still get hit by Zeus though. But what's also interesting with this is, again, with Potion of Might, this becomes an 8/8 body as well. Maui can become a 9/5 with the Potion of Might, because even though Maui's not a villain, it still can get boosted up by 3. And then the Cusco and the Madame Medusa, which also can become an 8/4 body as well. So just like really, really cool deck here, basically utilizing villains. And again, the King Candy shift will allow you to draw additional cards. The Flavorsham is a draw engine of itself. But this deck is more of a control deck, not a ramp deck, right? You're not ramping really, aside from the Tipo, which is just kind of like a one-time fishbone. Very interesting to see this deck kind of make it out on top in the TPN tournament. In addition to that, you still have your basic representatives, Steel Song. This one is using the Daisy Ducks at 3, not at 4. Still using Pete Games Referee as well. Only on 2 Naveen's, and lots of people are still on the Cinderella to combat a lot of the ward shenanigans that Emerald decks are putting up. Not too much Emerald out here. We do have discard aggro. So how did the deck evolve after Bucky? I've already kind of posted videos about this as well. But yeah, they just go back to what they were trying to do prior to Bucky, right? On the Lucifer for discard, only 2 Brunos, which is interesting. Still on Clarabelle for draw. And, I faced against my friend using this deck. This is more or less what came second place in the Toronto side event by Ed. I keep talking about this in my gameplay videos when my friend was using this against me. But yeah, iterations of this deck, will pop up here and there. Beast Tragic Hero, Clarabelle for draw. You're welcome. We don't talk about Bruno. Zeus for the removal. Ursula Deceiver with strength, and with Let the Storm Rage on for, again, that same synergy. Discard with the Sudden Chill. A lot of actions in the deck, so naturally you can play the Diablo line. It's probably one of the only decks, along with Amber Emerald, which will also continue to play Diablo, but you should see Diablo declining in price because of that. And then aside from that, not too much else. I mean, this aggro deck is probably the Doc aggro, if I had to assume. Yep, Doc right here. Gathering Knowledge on the Mickey Mouse. A lot of 1-drops here, a lot of 2-drops, because again, you want to empty your hand as quickly as possible to drop the Doc, draw 2. And on the Library, no Queen's Castle, so they know the benefit of putting those Trinabogs and those Magic Brooms on that location to get the additional card draw, and 1 random Tiana there as a good resist target to Quest for 2 as well. So interesting developments in the metagame. Let me know what you think. There's a couple other things we could... Oh, sorry, yeah, I told you I would review this one from Sweden. So I actually watched this final match where the Amber Emerald aggro player actually made it to the finals. A 60-card Amber Emerald aggro, which is crazy to think, right? But a lot of 1-drops, right? How many is that? 3, 8 is 11, and then another 8 is 19 1-drops. That's crazy, right? And then only 8 2-drops. You've got the Baloo as a bodyguard for 3. You've got Clarabelle for draw power at 4. And of course, 4 of the shift Clarabelle along with 2 of the smaller ones as well. So a total of 6 shift targets for the big Clarabelle. 2 Chernobogs, 3 of the Hey Hey. So this is really what's interesting. And I really commend this player for kind of putting this together. Because if you're able to play your lines correctly, the Clarabelle should always be able to proc a draw, even if you are on the draw. It's much stronger when you're on the play, when your opponent has the extra card and you're dumping your hand faster, obviously. Same with the Hey Hey. Stronger when you're on the play than on the draw. But again, because you're aggro, you can afford to like dump your hand out, skip a turn of ink, and then get that tempo back with the Hey Hey later on. This is also a body that Quest for 2. But, being 60 characters, 2 Chernobogs is huge, right? You just drop this thing. everything goes back into your deck, and now you have a huge body on board, which again, you know, all of these very powerful cards, they just get outed by things like Bruno and like You're Welcome, which is why I keep saying those cards just seem so insanely powerful right now in the metagame. Yes, you know, they do cost a lot, but they're songs, and they just straight up remove things. Like, you don't even have to worry about like, oh, it has to be this strength or this willpower for me to out it, like with Ruby or with Steel. You're seeing these other removal options come into these other inks that are effectively stronger, in my opinion. Like, think about if you had a Dragonfire that was a song that, you know, you can sing and is inkable, right? Like, that's how I look at Bruno, and that's how I look at You're Welcome. Like, yes, You're Welcome draws too, but you can also use it on your own stuff. Like, these cards are so strong to deal with high-end threats like this. On the top end, you got Pegasus, the Queen, no morphs, despite playing quite a few shift targets here. What is that, 10 shift targets in total, 3 Cloud Kicker. Rapunzel, I mean, I guess makes sense. You know, you got a lot of X and 3 bodies that you can proc 2 heal on. And if you get a Clarabelle or a Chernobog out, you know, you can draw 3 off of it, or just draw 3 off of itself, right, too, if you have 2 Rapunzels. Or I guess off the Daisy as well. So I guess, yeah, it can make a little bit of sense. And the fact that this thing does quest for 2 and is a 5 willpower body, a little harder to out, makes sense. You know, obviously this player did very well because they made it to 2nd place. The winning list, though, like I just talked about earlier on in this video, the Emerald Amethyst. If you go up against an aggro deck with a deck like this, or if you want to beat aggro, other aggro variants, this is the deck you should play, because I think it was shown in the finals, like the Rorik coming down and just absolutely decimating the progress that the aggro player was making. Like, they got them back down to 0 lore. I don't think they were too far ahead to begin with, but like, just the fact that you just clawed them back down to 0 while they expended resources to try to develop a board and quest, like the Lyle just like instantly shuts down the the potential progression of aggro decks. You have the Gothel Bounce, you have Rafiki to check the aggro threats as well. Like, I think game 1, the aggro player went first, dropped Lilo, and then this player, the Emerald Amethyst player, dropped Rafiki on 1. And then, you know, as you saw from the Emerald Amber list, there's no bodyguards until turn 3. So like, they missed out on a whole turn of questing with the Lilo for 2 lore, just because they didn't want to get checked by the Rafiki. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff. The Emerald Chromacon, interesting choice. Only 1 copy of Library as well, 2 of the Queen's Castle, the You're Welcomes, the Elsas, the Cricky, the Gothel, only 3 Clarabelle and 2 Ursula Sea Witch Queen coming down as well, shifting onto Ursula Deceiver. The Bonsai, another fantastic target. The fact that it's a 2/3/2 body that can quest for 2, it's a very versatile card for aggro, which is weird to say because it has no effect. But it's like, I drop this on 2, and whatever you play for the first like 2 or 3 turns, like, this card will check it more or less. Or I just quest for 2, and whatever you opt to try to trade into my Bonsai will get traded out as well. Like, that's why this card is versatile, because you can use it as an offensive card or a defensive card, right? Yes, it's uninkable, but it is very versatile in a deck like this for sure. That you can kind of shift focus, whether you want to be an aggro-oriented player or in the matchup, or if you want to be a little bit more defensive. Again, could be play draw dependent also. So that's going to go ahead and wrap it up there. I mean, I'm sure there's more we could review. If you are interested in further breakdowns, let me know. But interesting to see the Emerald decks coming out on top here, despite no Emerald really showing up for like the CCS. You know, I guess that just goes to show you the difference in maybe the North American to the European preference, right? Like, I know in Europe, in set 4, Sapphire Steel was much more popular there than it was here in North America. I say that, but like, I think in Toronto, Sapphire Steel, even post Bucky, still had a good representation. Anyways, I'm not going to try to ramble on here. Let's wrap up this video. If you made it this far in the video, thank you again for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this meta breakdown. Quantum is out.